Hi, this is Kimberly Reuter, business advisor and supply chain expert, and thanks for joining me on my podcast, The Morning Mood. And today we have a special guest, Stacey Heller, who I met through Steve Haas, who you guys met a couple episodes ago. We talked about finance and retail and e-commerce. And Steve's going to be a return guest with us. And this is his friend Stacey. And Stacey has a very interesting, unique story. She does a very important job out there, and we're going to learn more about her, what her greatest lesson is, how she's applied it to her success, and hopefully in the future we will have her back. Welcome, Stacey.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I loved the episode with Steve. He's such a great guy.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for listening. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got where you are.
So I was a young bride.
Woo!
I got married at 22. I had actually failed out of college, wasn't a partier, but didn't realize it at the time, but was dealing with mental health issues, had undiagnosed ADHD, depression, anxiety. And this is 1988, 1989. People didn't talk about that. And I
That's
grew
what
up.
Mad Dog was for. That's what, yeah, right. You drank away your problems back then. That's how we handled that. Thank you very much.
Right. And the frustrating thing is I didn't. I referred to it then, and I actually stand by it today, all these years later. I committed academic suicide.
Oh,
I was way too self-aware that my life wasn't worth ending. However, my school career was. And it was messy for my family. I grew up in an basically upper middle class family. I lived in Princeton, New Jersey. Like, people don't fail out of college.
no.
And I did. And it was a way for me to make a statement without actually saying anything. So I met my husband and we got married. He's 7 years older. And it was a way to get out of my house. And I was self-aware enough when he proposed the idea of proposing. And he said, look, you're young. I've already done my stint in New York. I've already done all these things, but I'm sort of on the marriage mindset. How do you feel about this? And I said, look, you're my guy. I'm super young. So if you're cool with me growing up over the course of our marriage, then I'm cool with getting married. And
Wow.
Yep. And so we did. And then, since I really didn't have a career per se, I had always worked in retail. We had our children fairly quickly. And so we had 4 kids. So I was a very frustrated stay-at-home mom.
Oh, no.
Like, I don't do anything halfway. Our plan was to have, actually, first of all, we had no plan.
I'm going to say at 22, if you had a plan.
Yeah, we had no plan. And back then, you didn't really plan your pregnancies. You got pregnant.
Yeah.
And
or you
I'm
did.
like,
It was either one or the other. There wasn't a lot of I don't remember there being a lot of discussion about it.
no.
You did or you didn't. Yeah. And you were either happy or you were not happy. That was kind of it.
Pretty much. And I say, and my kids have heard me say this, and I don't know, this is probably why they do therapy. It's not that I liked kids. I liked sex.
They're definitely in therapy. A lot of it.
Oh, yeah. 4 out of 4 have 100% done therapy. We gave them a choice when they were younger. We're like, college or therapy? We'll pay for one or the other. And if you're smart, you'll go to college so you can afford therapy.
It's great advice. Very good advice. So you were young. You had 4 children fairly young.
Yep. And I was the classic East Coast living in Connecticut mom, twin set pearls, involved in the PTA, all of these things, which in hindsight, I realized that being involved had less to do with the care and keeping of my children and their environment and more to do with the care and keeping of my creative desire to participate and do something that had value. And, I felt like I couldn't go out and find a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so volunteering was my way of adding value.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's great. You realize what was going on. I think there's a lot of people out there who volunteer who power trip a little bit because they are looking for that sort of what do I do with myself? And this is where they end up is in the volunteer world. And that can be kind of scary as well. But yeah, so a very interesting come upness, right? So you're really young, your kids assumably move out. You're still, what, probably in your 40s and you're empty nester.
Well, no, I'm actually, thank you for that. I am 55. And basically, fast forward a number of years, the kids are now in high school, and I started, my daughter actually connected with a stylist, and he and I connected, and I had a lot of thoughts about his business. And he was really the first person that said, I'm curious about these thoughts. When you talk about my business, you talk about what I want it to be, what my goals for it are, and you speak of it like it's no big deal, like it's so obvious. And it was to me. And so I
Right.
ended up starting to work with him.
Excellent. And when you say stylist, what exactly was that? Was that clothing style for individuals? Was that
Yep.
styling for windows? Like, what was that
Yep.
for?
He actually, like Steve, he had been in retail. He had done a lot of things. He took all of his interest in clothing and all of those things, and he put it into personal styling business.
Oh, yes.
And so what I found though is that I have this intuitive ability, and when I would work with clients in the closet, I would get too wrapped up in like, who did this to you? Who made you think you can't wear stripes? Like,
The
and
drama of it
oh,
all.
yeah, and I just, it was not the best space for me and the best use of my skills. Instead, it made more sense for me to really hone in on his message and his marketing, and so
Yes.
that's what I pivoted to.
Yeah.
And with that confidence, I then went out and started my own business, Stacey Connects, so that I could do the same thing for other clients.
Yeah. And so what do you do specifically for your clients now?
So it's really a mixture. It's a lot of the messaging and marketing piece. It is giving my clients permission to actually be their authentic self and stop focusing on the grown-ups that they think they're supposed to be. I work with solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, small business owners, and they all have this passion that they've turned into a business, and they're all playing like, I'm a business owner now, I must do this. And it becomes
Mhm.
robotic and they lose their soul in it. And so I'm
Mhm.
giving them permission to reconnect with it.
And that's a really powerful message. And this is Steve connected you and I, and this is actually what we talked about. And it's a lot about what my podcast is about. Is it's about supply chain leadership in life, but it's also intentionally messy, right? Because we get attached to this expectation of what success is supposed to look like. The big house, the big car, the whatever, the big whatever it is, right? And we get on that treadmill and we start running along and we got credit card debt. We need a bigger job. We need a bigger bonus. And then we need this. We need something else to make us feel good because we're working all the time. And it's a death trap. And you and I talked about this. You have a very unique perspective on it that I want to have you back and talk about, like you talk about being children and losing connection with our inner child and kind of what our true intent is in life. And we're going to talk about that more. But it's very interesting that you work with people who are so caught up in what it's supposed to be. And what I see in my world, because I work with corporate a little bit more than you do, but I see that, I must be right. I am right versus getting it right. And what's shocking to me is how much it shuts stuff down. Do you see
Oh,
that too when you work with people?
100%. I worked with somebody last week. I was having a conversation and they're trying to take their business to the next level and they can't even really figure out a name for it. And so the name that they came up with sounds like it should be on, LA Law from the 80s, right? And they're not that at all. And, I said, why are you trying to be something you're not? And
Right.
why are you trying to pretend that you're this serious business? You're a couple of really smart, really sassy girls that want to get up in people's business. So you need to call it something like that, up in your business. Who says that it has to be named like Ogilvy, Thorpe, and Smith?
Right. Right. And the other thing too is that I have found this too is that if you aren't authentic and honest about what you're trying to do, you're not attracting the right clients.
At all. And that's
You're
what part of
Yeah.
their frustration is, both in terms of the work that they're trying to attract and the type of client. because there's a difference between the work and also the client. If you don't enjoy the client, you're
Oh,
never
yeah.
going to enjoy the work.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can tell you that from personal experience, definitely for sure. So, looking forward to having a more in depth conversation about that. But for today, we want to hear what is the greatest lesson you have learned professionally or personally to date, and how have you applied it to your success?
So when I was in high school, I worked at a tennis club, a posh tennis club in Princeton, New Jersey. You can all imagine what that was. And
Lots of
I
white.
worked, oh, lots of white, every color was in just technicolor focus,
Focus, popped collars everywhere, starched. Because this would have been in the 90s, right? 80s,
This
90s?
is no, this is like 87, 88,
Okay.
89.
This is the land of starch collars, right? This is the if you didn't know how to iron anything, you could iron a polo collar
Oh,
within an inch of its life. That okay.
absolutely.
Straight, work
All
straight.
three of them that you wore together.
Oh my God. Oh, I forgot about the layering of the polos.
Yes.
I
Yes.
forgot about the layering of the polos. Yes. Okay. Continue,
So
please.
I was referred for this job. The president of the club at the time, I had babysat for her. I had worked for her family in Maine, like you do. And she referred me to get a job there. And the then manager at the club, Don Pidcock, he interviewed me and he had this whole speech for me about if you think that you're going to sit in a bikini by the pool and stun yourself, that's not this kind of job. And in my head, I'm thinking, bikini? I've
Are
never
you
worn a bikini. I'm a one piece girl. Like, look at me. And then, he talked about, I don't know if you've ever used a vacuum, but you will use one here. So it was this interview where he had all kinds of assumptions about me.
Yes.
And I got the job despite myself, I guess.
Mhm.
And I ended up absolutely adoring working for him. He was tough, clearly. He had preconceived notions, but he also gave me the best compliment, which turned out to be probably the best lesson I've ever had. And when I was leaving the job, he said to me, probably the best quality that you have that will take you far is that you understand the value of the guy that comes to clean the pool, and you have an understanding that they are as important, if not more so, than the president of this club.
Humility.
Humility and respect for what everyone does. And this understanding that it takes a lot of people to make the world go round, and
Yes.
that while everyone is not paid the same or in some ways treated the same, everyone should be valued the same for what it is that they contribute to the process.
Yes, I completely agree. Country clubs, tennis clubs can be particularly snooty places where people do not recognize what's going on. But we also see this in the corporate world too, as well. I talk about, leaders, good leaders are open minded, good leaders are kind, good leaders are humble. So this goes all the way around. The person who's actually writing the code is just as important as the CTO in my book. Do you feel that same? Yeah.
100%. So taking it through the various iterations of my, I'm doing air quotes here,
Mhm.
career, thinking back to my volunteering at schools, the school secretary is the hardest person that you're ever going to deal with. They
Yes.
are the keepers of the gate. And so learning that they have value and treating them with respect versus a you work for me mentality, it
Yes.
helps you progress what your agenda is and what you're trying to do, because
Yes.
now you're working with them. You're not working for them. They're not working for you. It's collaborative.
Yes.
And then taking that into other environments that I've had with that understanding that everyone has value and they should be treated as such,
Yes.
it's a huge piece.
Yeah. I remember being really young when I first started out as a broker in Baltimore. And I just got my broker's license. I was probably 27. I thought I knew everything. And there was this woman who had worked for the company I was working for like 30 years. And she'd been in the same position. And in my little immature mind, right, I could not understand why she had not moved up the ladder. Like after 30 years at this company, like there must be something wrong with her. Like
Right.
she's inadequate in some way, defective. because she hasn't, after 30 years, she hasn't tried to be the vice president or CEO or wherever it is that at 27, I thought that you should be at the wise, very old age of 45 or whatever she was, right? Like,
Right, right.
I was like, her life is ending soon. How is she not, how is she not peak, right? So fast forward a few decades and I get a little bit older and I realize that one, not everybody wants it. Not everybody wants to climb the ladder. Not everybody is defined by their job. Not everybody, has this focus on career. People have animals and families and kids and hobbies and other stuff that's important to them that motivates them that isn't in a workplace. So it was one thing I finally learned as I came along. And two, not everybody's equipped for it, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
She was amazing at the job that she performed, and that she kept that company compliant, and that was her job. She was amazing at that job. She didn't need to go up to have a title to justify who she was.
Well,
But
and yeah.
27, I don't get that. Go ahead.
Well, and that says something about the confidence of the people that are treated with respect and like they have the value and the recognition that they deserve. The guy that would come in to fix the pool, he was no schlub. He was fixing something that was a big portion of the club and operating that club. And
Right.
so he being recognized for what his, let's call it was his subject matter expertise, right? And it was a really important cog in the wheel of making that club run. And ultimately, a second part of this is that in having the grace to find the value in everybody, there's an appreciation that there's always more to the story,
Yeah.
which is hinting at what you're talking about. This gal that at the time you thought was being so stagnant in her career, there's
Right.
more to the story.
Yeah. She had a whole other life. She was a grandmother. She had this whole other thing that was, frankly, way more like interesting and probably more important to her community than my shitty little manager job in Baltimore. So but it took a while for me to get that, and that everybody contributes. Everybody has something to add. Everybody's good at something. I think that's the other thing I talk to people about all the time. Just because I'm good at something and you're not doesn't mean that I'm good and you're bad, or I'm better and you're less. You're way better at something that I'm terrible at. I mean, there's things that I am completely dumb about, but I have people who I would never believe would catch it and be like, no, 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 you're doing that wrong. I'm like, really? I didn't know that you knew anything about this. But there's kind of geared that way.
Yep.
So how about you
Absolutely.
apply this to success? How have you carried this forward?
I think it's been really instrumental in my relationships with people.
Mhm.
Let's call it, every interaction is ultimately a negotiation with people.
Mhm.
And so, whether it is from that PTA life that I was leading, or whether it is in really recognizing with the clients that I'm working with that they are subject matter experts, that actually the biggest obstacle, most likely in their professional development, is themselves. And
Mhm.
interestingly, it's not just about recognizing it in other people, it's recognizing it in yourself and reminding them that, hey, I can't do what you do. There is value. You are valued. And
Right.
so it has been a great way to remind people that, okay, so I'm working with the solopreneur, the entrepreneur that it's maybe one or two on their team. They have as much add value for the environment that they're in that you and some of the other people that have been on this program have with these bigger corporations that are maybe impacting a larger scope of business.
Yeah. Okay. We'll just leave it at that because I don't think I can really add anything to that. I think is probably what the problem was. Okay. So, end of what you said. Great point of view. So, you specialize in working with entrepreneurs and solopreneurs then?
Pretty much. It is definitely the fledgling or the stuck. I really love working with people that have been stagnant.
Yeah. And that's it. I was going to make a point earlier and I forgot it. And that was is that you pointed out that their biggest enemy is themselves because They are, and I've experienced this as well too. So they are an expert normally in something, right? And it's typically
Absolutely.
not building a business. It's in a product or service or something else. Like I had to learn a lot of this myself. I'm sure you did as well. And then what happens is they sort of get uncomfortable, right? They don't know. It's not their subject matter the expertise. And they either go one way or another. They get super curious and they probably end up talking to someone like you, or they start to down the I know everything and the shutdown mode. Do you see any other path in your experience? Those are the two that I see.
Well, there are the people that I would say that there are the people that think they know everything. And what happens is they actually alienate their clients, and
Yeah.
that ends up, they can't figure out why they're not successful. I'm so good at what I do. Why aren't I attracting business? And
Yes.
so they really shoot themselves in the foot. Then there's the people that are curious that come to me and they want to talk. And then there's the people that are not curious, they're panicked.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes.
So
Yes.
they are operating in fear. They are operating with huge sense of imposter syndrome. And very often I'm brought in as very much a word of mouth person where it's
Yes.
like, hey, can you talk the person off the ledge? And so I am working on that, which is where that piece of giving people permission comes in and
Yes.
reminding them that they are overcomplicating this and that they can get
Yes.
back to it.
Yes. That's a famous one, overcomplicating it, catastrophizing everything. This will be the end if I don't make it. Yeah, those are all very common issues for solopreneurs, entrepreneurs. Been there myself personally as well. So great lesson learned and how you've applied it to your success. We are going to have you back on a future episode. And if you want to give us a little teaser about your philosophy about children's books.
Yeah, so I have kind of a twofold belief that who you were as a child, what you played when you were doing pretend and make believe before your parents said that's ridiculous or your friends said that was lame, whatever it is that you were doing, if you think back to that time, if you are doing something in your professional life that however stretched thin the cord is that connects it, as long as it's still attached, you are likely happier in your professional career. And with that, I also believe that the best business books that are out there are children's books.
Excellent. We are going to get more into that because we talked about this briefly in another conversation. And we talked about like what I did as a kid. And I was like, dang, I think she might be right. And it's really interesting. So we will have you back to talk about that here in a week or so. But for now, that is our episode for today. And thank you, Stacey, for
Thank
sharing with
you.
us your greatest lesson learned and how you applied it to your life. And that is your greatest lesson is being humble and appreciating everybody's value for what they contribute, no matter how seemingly small it is.
100%. Well said. Thanks
Excellent.
for having me on.
Thank you. And we will talk again soon. Thank you, my audience, for being here. And we will talk again tomorrow. Bye.